welcome everybody on YouTube and Facebook as well, and then virtually. And I'll call the meeting to order and ask the clerk for the roll call, please.
Good evening, Your Worship. All members are present.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is review of revisions or deletions to the agenda. Anybody got anything you want to add or delete at this point? If not, we got a motion moved by Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor MacArthur. Be it resolved, the City Council approves the agenda as printed. Anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll consider the motion carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature tonight? Don't believe we have anything, clerk, as well. So, moving on to item number 6, review and adoption of the council minutes. I got a motion moved by Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor Ferrier, that be resolved that City Council approves the following minutes as printed at the regular meeting of council that we had on May the 4th, 2021. Any comments on that set of minutes? Anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Tonight we have a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, Municipal Act, and other statutes. And tonight we have zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2021-02. And the applicant is In and Out Truck Wash. And the land in question is 433-955 Han Drive. And the purpose of the application is to amend the zoning bylaw to rezone the property from manufacturing industrial M2 to manufacturing industrial exception M2-3 to add the motor vehicle washing establishment as a permitted use on the property. So Jennifer, I believe you're on the line. Take over.
Thanks, Carmen. So the application that we're looking at tonight is ZBA 2021-02 for In and Out Truck Wash in the Diamond Industrial Park. Go to the next slide, Brad. Okay, so the purpose of the amendment, sorry, just give me one sec here. Okay, so the purpose of the application is to permit a site-specific exception to the manufacturing industrial zone to add a motor vehicle washing establishment as a permitted use on the property. The applicant also owns the adjacent property to the north, and they purchased the subject property from the city in 2020 to allow additional space for the truck wash facility and specifically for the access driveway for the facility. The city approved the zoning bylaw amendment in 2019 on that adjacent property to allow for the motor vehicle washing establishment. So the effect of this application that we're considering is to extend that permission to the subject property. Okay, so the subject property is shown here by blue diagonal lines. So you can see that it lies between Han Drive and Highway 11, and it's just north of Radley Hill Road. So as mentioned on the previous slide, the applicant also owns the adjacent property to the north. Okay, and then this is just an aerial image of the same area, and you can see the subject land is indicated there. So this photo was taken during the site visit. The property that we're dealing with is the treed area in the middle of the photo, and the scrub area to the left of the photo is the other property that's owned by the applicant. So the property is designated employment areas in the city's official plan. Industrial parks are generally limited to traditional industrial uses. However, for this particular application, it can be argued that the industrial park, with its easy access to a major inter and intra-provincial transportation route, is the best location for this type of business in the city of Temiskaming Shores. Okay, so this slide lists the uses that are currently permitted as of right in the M2 zone. A motor vehicle washing establishment was initially left off of this list because such a facility in its traditional form, which is mostly for public automobiles, is not necessarily a use that needs to be located or is well suited to an industrial park. Additionally, consumer or public traffic volumes off of Highway 11 are generally discouraged by the Ministry of Transportation. This is the conceptual site plan for the two properties. So you can see on the property to the north, that's the location of the proposed building. It's the little white rectangle. And the subject property is the property to the south that shows the ingress driveway for the truck wash. So note that this site plan is not finalized and it is subject to change at this point. It's just the concept so you can see what the applicant is looking at. Just some additional information. So the Ministry of Transportation did review the initial application for the adjacent property, and they commented that MTO building and land use permits will be required for the development. Additionally, during the site plan control stage, MTO is requiring a stormwater management plan and an illumination plan for review and approval. So notice of this public hearing was advertised in the Temiskaming Speaker in accordance with the Planning Act. City staff have not indicated any concerns regarding this application, and no comments or concerns have been received from the public or other external commenting agencies as of the public meeting today. So the next steps for this application will be for council to consider the administrative report, planning report, and bylaw at the June 1st regular meeting, and site plan control will also apply to this development. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Are there any members of the public that want to speak to the issue here tonight? Anybody on YouTube or Facebook or chat box?
We don't see any, Mayor Kidd.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, questions, comments? Councilor MacArthur.
I just wondered about, they have to have a water meter added?
I would think so. It's up in the industrial park. It'll be a part of our ICI water meter program there. So,
Okay.
so any other questions, comments? I think this is probably one of the only truck washes that are they're going to be in operation east of Alberta, I think, from what I understand. So it should be interesting to see how the traffic flow goes in there. So, is there any other, nothing from the chat box at all? So if there's no other comments at this point, then I'll declare this portion of the public meeting to be closed and advise the council will give due consideration to any of the comments received after tonight there. So we will move on. We've reached our first question and answer period. Shelley, do we have any questions on the chat box at this point?
Not so far.
Okay. So moving on, we've got a presentation and Paul Cobb's on the line. We're looking for climate action Temiskaming, and it's regarding a municipal climate action presentation. And Brad's going to bring Paul online, I believe, in a second here. So, welcome, Paul.
Hi there.
Nice to see you again there. So,
thank you. Nice to be here.
It's all yours. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So I guess I'm not advancing the slides there. So I will just say good evening and thank you to everyone for having us at the, giving us an opportunity to present today. On behalf of Climate Action Temiskaming, we are a local volunteer group interested in supporting local activity and dialogue around climate change. Prior to the pandemic, we organized or helped organize in collaboration with other groups, several climate-focused community discussions. So we were really pleased with the turnout and enthusiasm at those events. I'd also like to just take a moment to thank the staff and the council for being open to this dialogue and for inviting us previously and here again today. And I'd like to recognize that the council did pass a resolution to join the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partnership for Climate Protection program recently, and moved rapidly to align their energy and conservation and demand management program with climate change planning. So the community has taken on some other new projects as well that really have the potential to align with climate action, including the ongoing work on active transportation. So on to the second slide there. So we know that climate change is having significant and often negative impacts across Canada, and these manifest in all sectors of our community and our economy. And the most severe of those impacts and consequences generally fall disproportionately on more vulnerable populations. So some examples and ways in which climate change is having an impact include extreme weather. So changes in precipitation patterns and average temperature lead to corresponding increases in extreme precipitation events and the possibility of maximum temperatures being higher and heat wave events that we just quite frankly don't really have a lot of experience in dealing with. Ecosystems and forests, the plants and animals of our region face additional challenges around climate change. In the agricultural and food security, research certainly indicates that local, regional, and international, at all those levels, climate will pose significant challenges to agriculture and food security. And locally, productivity gains that we might anticipate or expect or hope for from longer growing seasons may actually well be offset by, increases in extreme weather events, heat, or more frequent dry periods during the growing season. With regard to infrastructure, across Canada, our infrastructure has been designed and built to accommodate the ups and downs of a climate that don't really exist. Many of the key parameters that went into the design have shifted. So we are facing a higher likelihood of escalating repair, rehabilitation, and in some cases, when failures occur, replacement costs. Many communities face this challenge, but Northern Ontario is not an exception to that. In 2012, 2 hours worth of rainfall in Thunder Bay led to over $100 million worth of damages and ongoing liability issues. In Sault Ste. Marie in 2019 dealt with extreme precipitation and a lot of localized flooding. So we know that those kind of events have and can occur in our communities as well. And then there are the health impacts. While there's the immediate sort of physical risks to the population that come from fires or flooding events, and that can have cause damage to buildings and put people's physical safety at risk. There are also sort of slower onset health impacts as well. Lyme disease, increasing frequency of algal blooms, challenges with water quality associated with higher water temperatures as well. Health units across the north, including Temiskaming Health Unit, are doing some good work right now, studying and documenting the intersection of climate and health. So on that third slide there, so climate action Temiskaming. So what do we mean by climate action? Climate action has been said, not originally by me, but others, but there are three ways to deal with climate change: mitigation, adaptation, or suffering. And to avoid that last one, it's as wise to do as much as possible in the first two areas. So these are the two things that we are generally talking about when we talk about climate action. The first is mitigation. So that's reducing and then stopping activities that add greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. And the second is adaptation. So that is recognizing that some climate change has and is occurring, and that we need to act to reduce the negative outcomes associated with that climate change. And so there is a fair amount of work to do in both of those areas. And there are some actions can support both of those areas as well. The next slide. The municipal role, and here speaking specifically about the mitigation element, is critical when it comes to cutting emissions. By some estimates, municipalities can influence or control almost half of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. So municipalities are really important partners in supporting both national, provincial, and international climate change mitigation targets. So while those targets can seem, distant and far off, the link to the local level is really tangible. There are increasing pressures and requirements to act. For example, the federal government recently increased its commitment to cut emissions instead of just by 30% by 2030, up to 40 or 45% by 2030. So we're talking, and it does have a commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And then alongside that are changes to both policy and requirements, that add pressure and opportunity at the municipal level. So as we are sort of building and shaping our community, we have to keep this in mind. Essentially, our next generation of infrastructure, and community planning needs to be compatible with that sort of 20 or 10 to 30 year time frame of cutting, halving our emissions, and then getting to near zero. And it should also be designed to be climate proof, i.e., to handle the climate that we can expect to see in 2030 and in 2050, and not the climate that we would have had here, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. What was a climate normal will not be the same climate normal that we have in the future. So one of the great things about climate action is that it doesn't have to be simply an add-on or an additional thing. It aligns well with many other community priorities. So I mentioned the active transportation. So getting people out and providing safe spaces for active transportation aligns with having fewer car trips and reducing the number and frequency of trips that add to greenhouse gas emissions. We know that understanding and managing climate risks keeps people healthy and safe. Reducing energy costs, shifting to low carbon energy, we can avoid carbon costs, life cycle cost benefits for individual household. Reducing or shifting to low carbon energy can provide life cycle benefits at the individual household level, just as it can for the municipality. And there are cost benefits in the areas of investing in preparedness for climate change as well. So every dollar, invested in managing risks like flooding can, avoid $6 to $10 in repair and recovery costs should those types of events occur. Asset management and climate change risk management are increasingly sort of hand in glove. Asset managers across Canada are being trained to incorporate climate change in their plans and to ensure that municipalities get the most out of their investments, protecting their investments, ensuring that they get the full life cycle out of their investments. And there are there's a lot of alignment between climate change and risk management. So while we want to manage the physical risks to property and people, but communities are facing liability. So getting ahead of that in terms of understanding climate change issues and managing those risks can help on that front as well. And increasingly, climate action, is not necessarily optional. Already at the federal level, large infrastructure projects do require climate change assessments sort of built into the climate or built into the proposals and the projects as it is. So it's really a great time to ramp up climate action at the municipal level, and far from being an added challenge or cost, it's an opportunity to support residents, and it aligns with a lot of community values. We do see a lot of work that our neighbors are doing. So communities across Ontario, including Northern Ontario, are developing plans and undertaking projects that are both ambitious and innovative. There's a few examples on the slide here. But we see even small communities setting, ambitious targets to cut emissions by 2030 and to get to net zero emissions by 2050. They're aligning their asset management with a good understanding of how climate change will affect their assets. And on the last slide, I'd just like to point out, that for Temiskaming Shores, taking action on climate change doesn't mean sort of reinventing the wheel. In almost all areas, there are really great examples of case studies and projects that can be found. And there are resources and guides and training, that can really help inform the planning and decision making. At the provincial and federal level, there are grants and funding opportunities the city can pursue, and there's likely more to come on that. So what can the community do now? Some communities have adopted a climate lens. So it's essentially a screening tool to help ensure that new investments and decisions do include climate change considerations. And in the medium term and longer term, setting more ambitious targets around climate change, doing the work of risk assessments, and developing climate change strategies and plans to help guide the community are some of the areas that that could be pursued. Unfortunately, we've kind of collectively, at all levels, kind of kicked the can down the road on climate change. And we've gotten to the point where, the requirements and the pace at which we have to address these challenges is increasing. So for our community, it's really critical that the city recognizes that and starts to integrate climate into its planning. And it isn't necessarily about, climate change isn't really about kind of changing everything in the community necessarily. We kind of see it as more about protecting and preserving, both the places and spaces, and all the things about the community that we actually love. So, that's sort of the end of my question there, or my short presentation. But just wanted to, thankful for the opportunity to kind of encourage the council to think about sort of what the next steps would be with climate change now.
I know Matt Baum has been working with you there, Paul. I don't know whether Matt has any comments tonight or like make any comments before we ask council for comments.
I don't think I have any specific comments to make about the presentation other than a thank you to Paul for providing his input on this. He has some expertise in this area and obviously is a local resident. So thank you for him for kind of, again, providing this to us. And I feel like it's worthwhile to use that local expertise to try to help guide ourselves to find out or decide upon the best course of action for us in this area. Because like Paul said, future things like funding will be tied to sort of climate change and what our actions are to help mitigate that. The federal government has set some pretty ambitious targets, and they're going to be kind of ramping up the pressure on the levels of government below them to make sure that we're all doing our parts as well.
Thanks, Matt. Comments from council? Who wants to go first? Mr. MacArthur first.
Yeah, maybe you could clear up. You mentioned one point, and your presentation is very good. It's traveling with cars. You said something about cutting down the number of travel with cars. And I'm thinking, gee, we have a transit system. We have hockey teams that go to tournaments. They take buses, they take cars. Are you talking about less use of vehicles to cut emissions? And would this affect us? Teams are traveling all around, not just in hockey. And people do go down to see relatives in other places. And we do have, as I mentioned, we do have a well-attended bus route. So maybe you could explain.
No. So I mean, I'm not suggesting that we're advocating for getting rid of all cars. I've got a couple of cars, in my driveway. We need those. Communities are and individuals. There's a lot of electric cars around town now, and some cities are integrating electric vehicles into their fleets. There are school buses and buses that are electric as well. So we'll continue to see that as an important part of the transportation infrastructure. But there are a lot of instances in which we can see reducing the number of trips that we take. I know lots of people that don't feel safe sort of going from their house down to the beach because of some of the barriers that they face around active transportation. So seeing people getting out of their cars for some of those shorter trips, and not replacing all trips necessarily, but some of them, in a way that is both healthy and kind of feels good for the community, I think is important. And then, over the course of the next decade or two, moving away from cars that are fossil fuel powered. And some of that will come sort of naturally externally as the market changes. You'll probably see more electric vehicles and low carbon vehicles on the street.
Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kidd. Thanks for the presentation, Paul. Very informative. This council actually did speak at great length about climate action quite some number of years ago, and we did take it into consideration in most of our future endeavors. And I think staff puts a great effort towards their tender processing and major projects, infrastructure projects, using climate action as one of the considerations. I think maybe what we don't do well is notify the public of what we're doing. I know we did a major change to our lighting systems that reduced our energy use to a great deal. So maybe in our city news, in the local media, we could have a section where the mayor could report on what we're doing for the environment, so the public is aware of what's been done to date. Another place I think the municipality could play a part is getting the message out that the general public don't understand. Recycling Council of BC just made a presentation in the meeting I was at, and the average life of a cell phone is 4 to 6 years. But in Canada, the average cell phone is tossed after 2 years. So that's one area that has a major impact, whether you're mining for critical minerals or what. But people don't realize just how wasteful we really are. We're using 50% of the value of the cell phone and then moving on to the newest and latest model. So maybe the city could play a part in getting that message out there as well. But great presentation. Thank you for it.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks,
Dan.
Councilor Wheeler. Other comments? Councilor Hewitt? So your picture's pretty small there, so.
That's okay, Your Worship. So primarily, thanks for the presentation. You know, we're considering how can we make a difference? Well, we can get our youth to talk. We want some innovative individuals at the table, bring our youth together and help them see the big picture and provide some solutions to the outcome. Because in the end, this is their, you know, this is their space to create that safe space for sustainability. You know, you just mentioned Councillor Whalen in regard to tech models. You know, maybe we need to be putting out, you know, some reform where some of the technology we use we have a bylaw where, or some type of parameter in place where, you know, they're not upgrading all the time just so we increase that consumer society modality, right? Like there's so many different things that we can do, but if we want some strong answers, let's reach out to our innovative youth.
Thank you. Councillor LaFerrier.
Thanks, Your Worship. And thank you for the presentation. And I think the biggest part is we don't need to build anything new. There's a lot of positive things happening, as you mentioned, and it's really maybe reaching out, you know, to some of our neighbors and sharing and seeing if we can start participating a little bit more in some of the activities that are seeing some success. So, you know, I think, you know, we all have a role to play, and I think you articulated it extremely well when you said, you know, we got to start moving the chain a lot quicker than what we have in the past. There's been a lot of talk going on, and I would say some action to some degree, but not at the extent that we need. And thank you again for the presentation. Looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you.
Other comments? Yeah, just to expand upon Dan, I think both the federal government and the provincial government have been announcing a lot of programs they're going to over the next couple of years there to enhance the efficiency of our homes and that, and upgrade some of our homes and that. So a lot of new programs going to be announced. I know back when they gave us funding for the LED lighting upgrades for our street lights, we took advantage of that. And like Dan said, we saved about half our cost of electricity to run those street lights after we change them over to LED there. So we're looking at doing the same thing for our decorative lighting along the waterfront. So there's a lot of programs that we think we've been involved in, and probably will get involved in the future there as well. And I think something we'll take your presentation probably to our transit committee, probably your protection of person and property committee, as well as the recreation committees, and discuss this further and see what else we can do. So there should be lots of opportunity there, I think. So if there's no other questions, I'll thank Paul very much for your presentation. Appreciate that tonight there, Paul. And
great.
That will keep this in all mind there. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Moving on to the item number 10, the communications. We have a 10A is a letter from Mr. Maurice Flo and Mrs. Hazel Flo, the residents, regarding the request to purchase municipal land, and that was received on April the 28th. Has been referred to the municipal clerk for processing in accordance with the disposition of land bylaw 2015-160. 10B is a letter from Mrs. Melanie Ducharme, a resident, regarding the speeding on Lakeshore Road, received on May the 2nd. And that's been referred to the Public Works and Protection of Person and Property Committees. 10C is a letter from Mr. Drew Gawley and Miss Amanda Mazon, both residents, speeding on Lakeshore Road, road safety and promotion of active travel, received on May the 3rd. Referred to Public Works and Protection of Person and Property Committee. 10D is a letter from Miss Nadia Pelletier Levine, as a resident regarding speeding as well on Lakeshore. That's suggesting us somewhere a pilot program there, received on May the 2nd, and that's been referred to the Public Works and Protection of Personal Property Committees as well. 10E is a letter from Mr. Mark Wilson, a resident, regarding the recommendations for safer streets, and that received on May the 3rd and referred to the Public Works and PPP committees as well. 10F is a letter from Colleen Fagan, the task force member for the Kirkland Lake Opioid Poisoning Prevention Task Force. Support for an addiction residential community, received on May the 4th for information. 10G is a letter from Lisa Brooks, the president of the Municipal Court Managers Association of Ontario, regarding the POA streamlining and modernization, received on May the 6th. Motion be presented on the new business for that tonight. 10H is a letter from the report, actually, from the Temiskaming Foundation regarding the Temiskaming Foundation's 2020 annual report for information. 10I is a letter from Wendy Cook, city clerk for the city of Barrie, for support to a resolution for the National 3-Digit Suicide and Crisis Hotline, received on May the 7th for information. 10J is a letter from Luke Johnson, the Whiskey Jack Beer Company, request to purchase municipal land, received on May the 12th. And that's been referred to the municipal clerk for processing in accordance with the disposition of land bylaw 2015-160. And finally, 10K, Miss Ashley Favish, the resident, regarding speeding on Lakeshore as well, received on May the 13th and referred to our Public Works and Protection of Personal Property Committee. So, a motion moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Whalen. Be it resolved that City Council agrees to deal with communication items 10A through 10K according to the agenda references. Unless people want to bring some additional items back. Councillor Jelly.
Yes, Your Worship, if I could, item F, the opioid task force for Kirk Lake, if we could bring that back, I think that warrants our support. And also item I, National 3-Digit Suicide and Crisis Hotline. I'd like to have that brought back also, if possible. Thank you.
Councillor MacArthur.
Yes, I was just wondering, Mayor, for items B, C, D, E, A, K, the speeding on different highways. I guess, I don't know if they're talking about highways, but could that be added to the 2 meetings tomorrow? I understand Public Works and I know PPP are meeting. Is that going to be added to the agenda tomorrow?
I'm pretty sure they are.
Oh,
yeah, I'm pretty sure already on that agenda there. So both for Works and PPP.
Thank you.
I see we got our speed sign up on Lakeshore just coming down into the 50 zone there as well. So I think there's going to be a bit of a report on that in the near future as well. So Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, no, thank you. I was going to mention the same ones that Councillor MacArthur mentioned. I agree they should go to committee, but I think we've been talking about this for a long time, so it should come back to council with some decisions being made on some type of action we can take to try to alleviate this, whether it's a bit of a realignment of the road or pay for stronger enforcement or something, but something has to be done because we're trying to encourage climate change by cycling and everything. It's not going to work so long if we don't get the traffic under control. Thank you.
Councillor MacArthur?
I don't like to compare us to Toronto, but I understand the other day the photo radar nabbed 81,000 speeders over 3 months in Toronto. So it can be done on the Lakeshore and elsewhere.
Other questions? Councillor Verger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree that I think these items should come back, to all of council. I think there's some really good suggestions in a couple of the comments, and if we are talking increased enforcement, we are talking increased costs. A nice simple way is to reduce the speed limit between Hillsbury and New Liskeard to 60 kilometers. We are talking in town. But again, that's just a suggestion. I know that there's a few groups that can provide a lot of valuable information, but I think it's really clear with the amount of feedback we're receiving from the ratepayers. This is a major, major, major issue. and not just between Hillbury and New Lister. There's a number of other spots where speeding, for some reason, is just continuing, to happen. And I would hope that we don't have to wait for a death to occur for us to put something in place. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what comes back from the different department heads. And again, I think there was some really good suggestions identified in the letters we received. So if we can entertain some of those, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think these committees have to come back with recommendations back to council. Council MacArthur?
Well, the way I looked at it years ago when I asked about the speed limit and we talked about 60, I think it was told to me, Mike, we put it back to 60, people are going to do 80 or 85. And, I'm not getting into a big argument over that tonight. And another thing you said, Councillor, something about the price will go up. Our taxpayers spend $2 million with the OPP a year. And I would dare say that speeding would be part of their job description. I'm not going against the police. I know they're very busy. I know they do other things. They've got a lot of problems with other things. But you wait till, if we can get this radar going, and if we have police officers on, we'll say the Lakeshore to start, I know just by statistics that things will work a lot better. And I would think the 2 million would cover speeding tickets. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Mitch's preliminary report on some of the findings we're getting from that speed sign there are in the last couple of weeks there. It's actually be interesting for Mitch there as well. So Councillor Gelling, last comment. We'll move.
Yeah, last comment. There is a report on that speed device tomorrow coming to a committee. And anyways, that's all I'm going to say for now. But I will point out that the OPP were doing radar on Lakeshore Road yesterday.
Yeah. Whenever the issue seems to come up, they come out and they do some patrols there and they do some radar enforcement, and then it kind of gets put on the back burner again, and people start speeding again. So, but anyways, we'll discuss that and get some recommendations and bring it back for council discussion there as well. So any other comments? If not, anybody opposed to that motion with those amendments? I'll consider that motion carried. There are no committees of council, community and regional reports tonight. Item number 12 is the committees of council, the internal departments, and I get a motion moved by Councillor Foley, second by Councillor MacArthur. Be resolved the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Building Maintenance Committee meeting held on April the 21st, 2021, and again on April the 28th, 2021. B is the minutes of the Corporate Services Committee meeting held on April the 21st and again on April the 28th, 2021. And C is the minutes of the Protection of the Person and Property Committee meeting held on April the 21st and April the 28th as well. And D is the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on April the 21st, 2021. Any comments, discussion on those 4 sets or 6 sets of minutes? If not, anybody opposed to that motion? We'll consider that one carried. Reports by members of council tonight. Who would like to go first? Councillor Gelling?
Yes, just briefly, Your Worship, just referring to the change in the Police Services Act and the detachment boards. Chris has arranged with our 19 municipalities in the area that we will be meeting virtually with them on Thursday to move forward with whatever collectively we decide to come up with for this area. So we'll be able to report back to council. I will be sitting in as chair, as will the chair Temiskaming, but then it will be municipal representation because that is the responsibility for this. So June 7th is the deadline, but we do have an extension until the end of June. Thank you. Thank you.
Other reports, Councillor MacArthur?
Yeah, I'd just like to say the 2021 Phenom Conference went today. The theme, Go North. I'll have a few things to say in June. I haven't put it all together, but I'll tell you, Fed North, great presentation today. There were many others. It is different doing a virtual, but all in all, Phnom got a lot of great publicity today. You don't have the Prime Minister on too many times giving a speech. I don't care if it was taped or not. And that was a bonus, plus the Premier and some of the cabinet ministers and other good speakers and good information. All in all, I thought it was a success.
Thank you, sir. Other comments, reports? Councillor Farrier?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to give an update from the BIA. At our last council meeting, we approved the process around bump outs to support some of the small businesses, restaurants that were struggling because of COVID. And I'm just happy to report that the BIA is in the process of ordering 3 sets of bump outs. There's 3 businesses that are going to take advantage of that program. And so they'll be putting their application in shortly to the city. And hopefully we'll start to see some progress in that area. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. Other reports, members of council? If not, I want to congratulate Danny for running the Phenom there as president there. He's done an excellent job today, and that was an excellent conference. Some really good presentations, especially from Telsat, Lightspeed on broadband. I mean, that's quite a program they've got set up there, and it's definitely going to benefit Northern Ontario for sure. And again, SpaceX, their Starlink program as well. It's an interesting program where they're putting up basically a satellite a day pretty well to circle the Earth at 700 kilometers, and providing a very reasonable priced broadband service there for people, especially in rural areas that can't get Bell Fiber or something that we have in the city here. So the other thing I thought was good was Amy DeManio's FedNor update there as well. Announced some different programs, same as Northern Ontario Heritage Fund had some different programs that they were announcing for this year as well. So definitely some great support there from those 2 agencies. Just one update on the airport that was part of this RADI program is that we've had an application in since last June for some support just to cover our operating losses at the airport, cover some of the reduction in revenues that we've had over the last year and a half. So that's been in. It's actually been transferred over to that RADI program once that RADI program was announced. And then last week we also put in a capital application through this RADI program for $2 million as well to upgrade some of our equipment, a new snow blower, maybe a new snow plow, and do some upgrades. We did some line painting last weekend, and some crack sealing we're going to do in the future as well. So, and we're also looking at possibly building a new terminal building on our airside closer to the weather station. So that's something in the future that we can get, if we can get funding. We put in for 1.2 million for that new terminal building there as well. So the access to the Grant hangar and the other terminal has been sort of lost to the airport authority. So we may just try and do something separately for ourselves and have a waiting area for the air ambulance people and any travelers coming in and out as well. So that's just a little bit of an update from the airport. So any other, yes, Councillor Whelan.
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor Kidd, thanks for the comments regarding the Phenom conference. One thing you would have realized watching the Phenom conference and then having the presentation earlier by Paul Cobb is you cannot have a green economy without considering Northern Ontario. All the critical minerals required for a green economy are in Northern Ontario. The announcements regarding biomass for the forestry industry are really significant announcements. And we see it just locally here with First Cobalt investment being made there. So the climate change initiatives across Northeastern and all of Northern Ontario are having a local impact. And I don't think we really realize it yet, just the possibilities that can be generated. So thanks again.
Thank you, sir. I know they were talking about trying to get into battery production there. I mean, we got the First Cobalt Corporation, but we're looking in maybe getting into battery production as well there. So, Councillor Foley.
I just, I was not a report, really just a heads up. Maybe Carmen, you know more, but looking at the Temiskaming Health Unit's vaccination rate for our area, we are now just over 60% at first dose. vaccination was updated today. So hopefully we're on when they have a reopening plan, we'll be open before we hopefully open sooner than later.
Yeah, I know the clinic they had in Englehart yesterday or last night there was for basically first responders not getting their second dose. So we're actually getting into giving people their second doses now as well. So hopefully with the supplies coming in over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should be able to start immunizing everybody from 12 up and getting that done over the next 5, 6 weeks there. So that's a real good shot that in the arm there to get this economy going again and get people back to school and back, at least get through the summer there with some a little more normal time. So thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Hewitt.
Yeah,
You're muted. Yeah.
congratulations, Danny. That was a long, lot of Zoom calls, a long time to sit at the computer, but good engagement and very, some really strong presentations. It was good to hear from our ministers as well as some significant economic players in the region as well. And just for the public, if anyone wants to listen to some of the speakers, Phenom will be broadcasting that as well, so that they'll have access to the virtual presentations. I was pleased to hear too, in regards to what's happening with our Northlander and trying to increase the productivity to get our supplies back in order. I mean, COVID has kicked a few challenges to the curb, to be sure, in regards to economic development and some of our supplies. And so that was good to hear that they're working on getting that up and running again. A lot of good presentations. Starlink was, Jonathan was quite the speaker, and it was, we have a lot of opportunities. I was surprised with how many satellites we have out in space. And if anyone was out this weekend, you might have seen some satellite trains that are out. And so there's all kinds of different things happening in our world. And the first time ever, like I've heard about this forever, but on the weekend I seen 2 satellite trains. So yeah, look up, good things happening.
Thank you very much. Moving on to notice of motions. Anybody got a notice of motion they want to present tonight? If not, we'll move into the new business. 15A is a letter looking for support from the fire departments, Township of Hudson, and the resolution 2021-223 is moved by Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor Whalen, whereas the council for the Township of Hudson adopt resolution 2021-049 at its regular meeting on March the 3rd, 2021 to provide support for Ontario fire departments. And whereas the role of Ontario's 441 fire departments and their approximate 30,000 full-time, part-time, and volunteer firefighters is to protect Ontarians and their property. And whereas according to the Ontario Fire Marshal and Emergency Management's latest data, in Ontario there were over 11,000 lost fires, 9,500 no lost fires, 784 injuries, 91 fatalities, and over to $820 million of estimated loss in 2018. And whereas fire emergencies only make up a portion of the daily calls for help received by fire and emergency service departments as they respond to nearly every public emergency, disaster, or 911 call. And whereas Ontario's fire department infrastructure deficit continues to grow annually and is almost entirely borne by the municipality and the local taxpayers, with the majority having populations under 25,000. And whereas due to antiquated structures and equipment that do not meet current industry standards, the safety of the Ontario public and Ontario firefighters is being jeopardized. Now therefore be resolved that Council for the Corporation of the City of Twisting Shores hereby supports the Township of Hudson in their request for the following. 1, that the federal and provincial government includes apparatuses, training, equipment, and structures for fire departments as eligible categories to any further infrastructure programs, which will not only provide immediate stimulus to the local, provincial, and federal economies, given current economic uncertainty, but also ensure the safety of Canadians and dedicated firefighters. And that this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Laurie Scott, Minister of Infrastructure, the Honourable Anthony Rota, MP for Nipissing-Temiskaming, John Vantoff, MPP for Temiskaming-Cochrane, the Ontario Fire Marshal John Pegg, the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, and the Township of Hudson. So Any comments on that motion? Councillor Whalen?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Kidd. I certainly support this. I think it's a good idea. I would, however, have preferred it did not say to be included in any infrastructure funding announcements. I would have preferred it had requested a separate funding program, because I do believe this is going to put smaller municipalities in a position where they're going to have to decide between fire department, public works. So that would be my only caution with the wording in it, but it's certainly a very worthwhile motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anybody opposed to this motion? We'll consider that one carried. 15B is support for Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario. Moved by Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor Hewitt, whereas Laurentian University is the largest post-secondary institution in northeastern Ontario, and whereas Laurentian University is economically and culturally important to Sudbury and Northern Ontario and has a bilingual and tricultural mandate to support French, English, and Indigenous programs, and whereas Laurentian University's growth and development has a substantial impact in Northern Ontario through the School of Architecture, the School of Mines, and the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, which continues to strengthen healthcare in Northern Ontario, and whereas Northern Ontario families will need to seek education elsewhere, depleting the potential workforce and growth of Northern Ontario for generations to come, and whereas the Ontario government has a vested interest in continuing to assure a high standard of post-secondary education in Northern Ontario residents, or for Northern Ontario residents, and whereas on February 1st, 2021, Laurentian University announced it had filed for creditor protection under the company's Creditors Arrangements Act, leading to a court-mandated restructuring of operations. Now therefore be resolved that Council for the City of St. George hereby petitions the Province of Ontario to work with Laurentian University to develop a plan that would secure its long-term financial sustainability. Comments, discussion? Councillor MacArthur.
Yes, I'm definitely going to be in favor of this motion. Watching this on television, this story, there's a lot of smelling going on, and I'll tell you, it's unbelievable that Laurentian University would make a decision to cancel French programs when I always thought it was more of a French university. But anyway, I think that before the government gets into this, I think there's a creditor protection company creditors arrangements, and where did all the money go? I think there's questions and more questions if you watch the news on Sudbury on a regular basis. So I sure hope that this can turn around, and these poor students, it's just terrible what's happened to them.
Any other comments? I know they got creditor protection, I think, until sometime in August there now, so they've got an extension there. So we'll see what happens in that process, and hopefully somewhere in the near future, between the provincial government and their university, they can continue their operations there. So anybody opposed to this motion? Seeing none, so that motion carried. 10C is support for the Provincial Offences Act streamlining and modernization. It's motion moved by Councillor Ferrier, second by Councillor Foley. Whereas the impacts of COVID-19 on municipally administered provincial offences court has resulted in a higher volume of pending POA trial matters, and whereas immediate regulatory and legislative changes are critical to delivering services to the public by putting in place the most modern, efficient, and effective justice system attainable, and whereas the proposed early resolution reforms in Bill 177, Stronger, Fairer Ontario Act, do not fully support the objectives of the ministry pertaining to the creating a modernized and efficient justice system, and whereas introducing administrative monetary penalties for camera-based offenses will free up POA court resources for more serious matters and providing a faster, easier, and more convenient system. Now therefore be resolved, the Council of the Corporation of the City of St. George requests the Attorney General of Ontario to halt the proclamation of the early resolution reforms included in Bill 177, Stronger, Fairer Ontario Act, and take immediate action to streamline and modernize this section of the legislation by making it easier and more convenient for the public and prosecutors to engage in resolution discussions, and by making it more effective and efficient to administer early resolution proceedings for Part 1 or Part 2 if not AMPS offenses in the Provincial Offences Court. And further, the Council requests the Attorney General of Ontario to enact changes to the Provincial Offences Act and any related regulations to permit the prosecutor and defendant or legal representative to agree at any stage of a proceeding in both legislated and non-legislated ER areas to a resolution in writing for proceeding commence under Part 1 or 2 of the POA, and to permit the clerk of the court to register the court outcome immediately upon receipt of the written agreement without requiring an appearance before a justice of the peace. And further, the council requests the Ministry of Transportation, in consultation with the municipalities, to give consideration to suspend temporarily the imposition of demerit points for persons who pay their tickets in cases where they have no previous relevant convictions. And further, the council requests the Minister of Transportation, in conjunction with the Lieutenant Governor in council, to make a regulation pursuant to S 21.1 of the Highway Traffic Act that would allow for all camera-based owner offenses be administered through the administrative monetary penalty, and for the Attorney General to support the necessary changes to allow technology-based enforcement of offenses to be administered through administrative monetary penalty, with revenues retained by municipalities to offset program costs. There's a mouthful. So, any comments? Anybody opposed to this motion? We will consider that one carried. 15D, approval of the council meeting schedule for July 2021 through to January 2022. I got a motion moved by Councillor Foley, second by Councillor MacArthur. Whereas bylaw 2008-160, our procedural bylaw as amended, indicates that regular meetings of council shall be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month, commencing at 6 p.m. unless otherwise decided by council. And whereas council typically reduces summer meetings in July and August to one meeting, now therefore be resolved that council for the city of St. George does hereby confirm the following schedule of meetings for the months of July 2021 through to December 2021. So 2022 should actually be. So. Any comments, discussion? We oppose that motion. We'll consider that motion carried, and we'll get into summer attire starting the first meeting in June and relax a bit for the summer. So 15E is memo 021 2021 CS, the 2020 year-end report, unaudited version. Moved by Councillor LaFerrier, second by Councillor Hewitt. Be resolved that council for the city of Storrs acknowledge receipt of memo 021 2021 CS regarding the 2020 year-end financial report for information purposes. Any comments? Everybody had some good reading there. So anybody oppose this motion? So that motion carried. 15F administrative report CS 022 2021, the communications enhancements. And I get a motion moved by Councillor Whalen, second by Councillor Jelly. Be resolved that council for the city of St. George acknowledge receipt of administrative report CS 022 2021, and the council approves the allocation of safe restart funding in the 2021 operating budget to complete communication enhancements based on the preliminary estimates received in the amount of $70,000. Comments, discussion? Anybody oppose this motion? We'll consider that carried. 15G administrative report CS 023 2021, the New Year's Eve fireworks for 2021 going on 2022. Motion moved by Councillor MacArthur, second by Councillor LaFerrier. Be resolved that council for the city of St. George acknowledge receipt of administrative report CS 023 2021. The council agrees to cancel the Canada Day fireworks display for 2021 due to the ongoing pandemic and associated public health restrictions. The council agrees to allow the New Year's Eve fireworks event schedule for December 31st, 2021, as per the fireworks bylaw 2009-161, section 3.3D. And the council agrees to reallocate $3,000 from the marketing operating line item to sponsor community fireworks displays in Hillbrook and Liskeard on December 31st, 2021. That's around the lakes there. So, comments? James is working there. Councillor Whalen.
Yeah, my apologies. It's probably in the package, but I haven't found it. So I'll ask anyway. Is this in conjunction with the New Year's Eve fireworks that were held last year, or is it in replacement of, or?
Yeah, no, it's a repeat of last year's thing where Mark's from North Cobalt Flea Market is involved there. The Community Care Cancer group is sponsoring a lot of this in partnership with Mark. And I think James
so we're going in partnership with them then.
Yeah, James is going to buy the fireworks and distribute it to the people around the lake, both in Liskeard and Diamond and Hillbury, and just try trying to support that whole program there. So the same as last year.
Yeah, just didn't, my apologies. I just didn't see it in the package and I wanted to ask, but I support it.
No, I talked to Mark and then James there last week there and discussed that a bit with them there, and that's what their plans are. So anybody opposed to that motion? Seeing none, we'll move on. 15H, Administrative Report PPP 002 2021, the volunteer firefighter appointment. I got a motion moved by Councilor Ferrier, second by Councilor MacArthur. Be it resolved, the council for the city of Temiskaming acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report PPP 002 2021, and the council hereby appoints Sean Thibodeau as a volunteer firefighter to the Western Shores Fire Department in accordance with the recruitment and retention program. So, any comments? Anybody opposed to that motion? We'll consider that motion carried, and we'll welcome Sean to the fire department. That's another great addition there as well. 15I, Administrative Report PW 013 2021, the Fire Rescue Vehicle Tender Award. And I got a motion moved by Councilor Jelly, second by Councilor Foley. Be resolved, the council for the city of Western Shores acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report PW 013 2021. The council agrees to increase the capital budget amount for the fire rescue vehicle for the Fire Station 2 from $415,000 to $430,085. The council agrees to defer the fire alarm capital project in the amount of $8,000 and further agrees to utilize $7,085 from the fire equipment reserve in order to fund the revised budget amount for the fire rescue vehicle. And the council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into an agreement with dependable emergency vehicles for the supply and delivery of a fire rescue truck in the amount of $422,646 plus applicable taxes at the for consideration at the May 18th, 2021 regular council meeting. So, any comments? Councilor Jelly.
Yes, just quickly, this is certainly a good addition to the station in New Liskeard. Their response vehicle there is quite old and not that safe to be using anymore. So this is a welcome addition, and it certainly brings our fire department fleet up to a standard where we can compete with anybody for having great equipment, great officers, great volunteers, and everything else. So that's a great move. Thank you.
Any other comments? Anybody oppose this motion? We will consider that carried. And last item of new business, 15J is Memo 007 2021 RS, the Hillbury Fire Hall construction schedule. And motion moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor Jelly. Be it resolved, the council for the city to acknowledge receipt of Memo 007 2021 RS. And the council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend bylaw 2021-80. An agreement with CGB Builders Incorporated for the award of the fire station number 1 design build to extend the project completion date to July 1st, 2022 for consideration at the May 18th, 2021 regular council meeting. So, any comments? I think that's a prefabricated steel building that we're looking at delays in the delivery of that particular building with COVID and everything. So, anybody opposed to that motion? We will consider that one carried. And moving on to number 16, the bylaws. Moved by Councilor MacArthur, second by Councilor Whalen. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-076, being a bylaw to adopt an outdoor patio policy for the city of Temiskaming Shores. Bylaw 2021-082, being a bylaw to adopt a 2021 municipal budget for the city of Temiskaming Shores. Bylaw 2021-083, being a bylaw to provide for the adoption of the 2021 tax rates for municipal and school purposes and to further provide penalty and interest for payment in default. Bylaw 2021-084, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2021-080 to enter in an agreement with CGB Builders Incorporated for the fire station number 1 in Hillbury design build. Bylaw 2021-085, being a bylaw to enter in an agreement with dependable emergency vehicles for the supply and delivery of a fire rescue vehicle. These bylaws be hereby introduced and given first and second reading. Any comments, discussion? Anybody opposed to this motion? We will consider that one carried. And motion moved by Councilor Ferrier, second by Councilor Foley, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-076, 82, 83, 84, and 85 be given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and clerk, and the clerk with seal affixed there too. Any last comment? Anybody opposed to this motion? We'll consider Without carried. Schedule of meetings. The next one scheduled for Tuesday, June the 1st, 6 p.m. And this subsequent meeting will be June the 15th. Then we'll go into one meeting in July, one meeting in August. So, question and answer. Sorry.
Your kid, if I could just mention on scheduled meetings that we will schedule both meetings in June to be virtual and evaluate things in July. So the same thing, we won't know till after our June 1st meeting what our status is. So
yeah,
rather than scrambling, we will continue to have the June 15th meeting virtually and then evaluate whether or not we'll be able to meet in person in July.
Okay, thank you. Shelley, any questions in the chat box tonight?
No questions tonight.
No questions tonight. There's no closed session as well. Any questions from council at this point? I should ask that as well. So any questions or comments? Members of council? Council MacArthur, I think, is coming on. Yes.
I'd just like to know what's cooking with the there was a breakdown near the former library in Hillebury. There's, you know, that box that's built there. How's that coming?
Chris or Mitch, as far as that contamination?
Doesn't matter. Next meeting.
Mitch may have a more up-to-date report on that.
There has been some drilling on the road to put in some monitoring wells, and that is currently being monitored by a consulting firm from down south. And we are speaking pretty much weekly with the MOE on updates in regards to that situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other last minute question, comment? If not, then we'll move on to confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Foley, second by Councillor Hewitt. Be resolved that bylaw 2021-086 being a bylaw to confirm certain proceedings of the council of the corporation of the city of Twisting Shores for its regular meeting held on May the 18th, 2021 be hereby introduced and given first and second reading. Anybody oppose that motion? We'll consider that carried. A motion moved by Councillor Jelly, second by Councillor Whalen, be resolved that bylaw 2021-086 be given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor and clerk and the corporal seal affixed thereto. Anybody opposed to that motion? And last motion of the night, moved by Councillor MacArthur, second by Councillor Hewitt, be resolved as council hereby adjourns meeting at 7:06. Anybody opposed to that motion? Adjourning. So, and we'll see what happens to the hockey game on Thursday nights, everybody. So, you see whether Montreal gets blown out in 4 or 5.
Is this meeting over now?
This meeting's over now.
Jeff, give my